Today I am going to show you the magic of masking magic by Gina K Designs. Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. I decided to shop my stash a little bit to come up with a postage collage. Now, the card that I'm going to create is going to be very similar in style to the Stamptember set that Gina had released in collaboration with Simon Says Stamp. And that set is sold out. It does not get re-released. So I thought I would come up with a similar design. Now, I'm going to have all of the products I'm using in today's video listed down below in the video description if you're interested in any of these. The first thing I'm going to do is take the Master Layouts 14 set, which has this postage collage die set, and I'm also taking out that stitched rectangle. So I have a piece of layering weight white cardstock. I'm going to trim it down with my paper trimmer. So I have two panels here that measure 4¼ by 5½. Then I'm going to bring out my intricate die cut machine. I have it set to die cutting and the second dial is at 0. I'm using my magnetic platform and placing that postage collage die onto the layering weight white cardstock. I'm going to run that through the intricate to die cut that out. And since I have my die cutting machine out, I'm going to go ahead and die cut out this stitched panel. And this is just going to layer right behind my postage collage. So now I have my two pieces that this is the panel that's going to go behind that postage collage. And then my other one, I just need to pop out. It sticks a little bit because I have used this die many, many times. So I just use my fingers to kind of pop it out. And then I can work on creating my scene. And I thought the best tool to help me do this job is going to be my stamp wheel. So what I'm going to do is place my postage collage down onto that sticky mat, and I'm just going to press that down nice. The sticky mat is going to hold the cardstock in place. And now we have the Masking Magic strips. I love these. They never rip my paper. And there's three different sizes to these. So I'm going to pick the skinniest one and I'm going to place that right over the holes that the die had cut out to separate that postage collage on the cardstock. And I'm going to trim them down when needed. I'm also kind of letting it overlap onto my sticky mat. I really like that these are going to stick to the sticky mat and it's not going to leave any residue behind or anything like that. So just finishing in, filling in all of those open areas. One of the reasons I am using the Masking Magic strips and not the stencil is I have a lot of stamping to do. I have done a previous video, I can link it here, of where I did do some stamping with some silhouette images, but I have a lot that I want to cover in here. So using the Masking Magic strips is not going to give me too much height and is going to allow for better stamping. I'm also taking some of the thicker ones and I'm going to place them around the edges just to mask that area off as well. I want to create a snowy hillside on the top and the bottom portion of this. So I have now the Masking Magic sheets, and I'm taking one and just using my scissors to cut my own hillside. The bottom portion I'm going to use for my hill, and then I'm using the other piece there that I trimmed out as a negative. But I'm going to use these kind of interchangeably. I'm going to start on the bottom portion of my postage collage, and I'm going to just remove the backing of that Masking Magic sheet and place my hill down towards the bottom. So what I'm going to start first with is ink blending my sky. Now I don't want to get any ink blending in that top portion just yet. So I did use another piece of Masking Magic to kind of mask that portion off. I'm going to start by ink blending with a sea glass. This is a really nice light blue if you haven't used it before. And I'm going to start kind of towards the bottom of my hillside. I'm going to ink blend that up about halfway. And then I'm going to come in with a darker shade of blue. This happens to be in the navy, starting towards the top of those those postage collage squares and blend down so it's going to gradually meet sea glass. And as this dries, it's going to create a beautiful transition of color. And then I'm going to carefully remove my hillside and I am going to use that other piece, my mask, and I'm going to mask off the sky so I can add a little bit of ink blending to my snowy hill. I didn't want to leave it bare white because I wanted to have kind of that nice pretty wintry reflection. So I'm using that kind of negative piece that I trimmed off to mask off the sky. And then I'm going to come in with a light lilac. And for this, I'm going to use a mini blending brush. I have a little bit more control since I didn't want my entire hill to be purple. I just wanted a light hint of color. Now, a lot of times you can reuse your masking magic. Mine, I'm going to have quite a bit of color all over the place, and I'm going to be using it to mask off areas after I stamp, which means it's going to pick up color. So, because of that factor, I am not going to be reusing these for future projects. But depending on how much ink blending you do, you may be able to reuse yours. So right now I have my pretty purple kind of tinted hill there, and I'm going to remove that top mask. I did have one of my little skinny strips start to pick up a little bit, but I could easily push that back down and just carefully peel the masking magic back onto itself and just push that back down so it stayed in place. Now I'm using that same piece to mask off the bottom portion, and I'm using the other end so I don't have a lot of ink there. And now I'm bringing in this is actually the mask of my hill that I just used to mask off the sky, and I'm using that to be able to get to my sky in this top section. Now you're gonna see I'm also bringing in quite a few other pieces of masking magic. The reason for that, you don't have to do this, but the reason for it is I'm trying to keep my sticky mat on my stamp wheel, kind of clean. I can get pretty inky, pretty messy, and I know dark blues will stain. Most colors will stain your sticky mat, and I'm just trying to keep it as clean as I can for as long as possible. But I do end up using some of those pieces anyway to mask things off or hold my dies in place. In the meantime, I had gone ahead and ink blended my sky just like as I had done the bottom one. I'm going to mask that off, and I'm going to add a little bit of that light lilac to my snowy hill now. So I'm sure you're wondering, what is all the fuss about masking magic? If you haven't tried it yet, I definitely suggest buying a pack of the masking magic sheets and the strips. They are phenomenal when it comes to masking off areas on your card projects. It does not rip your cardstock. You could see that I have used these many a times, and I do have quite a few videos as well using masking magic, but they are just phenomenal when it comes to masking off your card projects. You can use them for creating your own masks and stencils. They're very thin and lightweight, and you can ink blend on them. And like I mentioned earlier, you can reuse them in most cases, but just depending on how much you're inking it. So they are a very useful tool. This is where I am starting to build my scene. Now, you're going to notice I do have some masks in certain areas, depending if I want my deer to kind of go into the next scene or not. So, the deer and the trees, I am using the natural silhouettes and winter terrain. These are older stamp sets. I just went through and shopped my stash. I knew the project or the image that I wanted to create. So I had just gone through my stash and found images that kind of matched that vision that I had of this card project. So I'm just coming in and layering in those trees. I place them down on the cardstock, pick them up with my what is it called? It's the plastic piece of the stamp wheel. So I'm picking it up with that and then placing it back down. And I'm moving through the cardstock, just creating these little scenes and the trees. I am masking off the top portions or the sides once again with the masking magic, as long as I do not have ink on it. With the VersaFine ink, which is what I'm using here, it stays wet for a little longer. So if you use your masking magic to mask off areas that have already been stamped, you are most likely going to pick up some of that black ink. So you don't want to reuse those to mask off other areas, or you will transfer that ink onto a different part of your card. I have one last little scene here that I want to add. I'm also keeping in mind where I want my sentiment to go. So I'm trying to place the deer where I know they won't get covered up too much. But I really love how the trees are kind of hanging off the edge of those postage areas. And now I'm going to come in with some additional little elements. And this is from the Spring Friends set. There's a lot of sets that Gina carries that have these different kind of mailing stamp sets like 50 cents or first class, things like that. So I am just using a small comfort block and my VersaFine ink to stamp those right into those individual areas. Again, masking off the areas as needed. This one comes from the Postcards and More, which is one of my favorite stamp sets. So I masked off that area and then finished off with one over in the top right corner. Now I can start peeling away the masking magic, which comes up super easy. I am just carefully peeling it up using my pick if I need to help get it started. And it's going to reveal this beautiful postage scene. So technically, I am still in Christmas card mode, but I know many of you have already moved on from Christmas cards, and this is going to be just a winter card. But I know there are some winter birthdays. I have one in my family, and that's what I plan on doing this for as long as I remember to give it to him. So I'm using a happy birthday sentiment from the Elegant Thoughts stamp set. Now you can get a stamp, there's also a coordinating die, and then Gina also has Elegant Thoughts Polyglaze sheets. So if you wanted to foil this with your transfer foil and your fuse machine or your Mink, you can pick up those Polyglaze sheets. I will have those linked down below as well. For right now, I am just stamping this in black ink using my stamp wheel since I already had that out. And again, because I know that this ink stays wet for a little while, I am going to just quickly go over that with my heat tool to help dry that ink a little bit. And then I'm going to line up the coordinating die, and I'm using scraps of my masking magic to hold my die in place. It is a perfect stickiness to hold your dies in place. I trimmed my panel in half so that I can run it through my mini intricate machine. I'm going to bring out my two plates. So I have a base plate that I cut into, place my top plate on top, and run that through the machine. It's going to cut that out absolutely perfect. And I'm going to use the rest of that cardstock to die cut out three more pieces. So I'm getting use out of all of this scrap cardstock. The reason I do that is I like to layer up my die cuts when it comes to my sentiments. So I have some Gina K Designs Connect glue that comes in a large bottle, and I put it into these fine tip bottles so I can add the liquid glue to the back of those die cut pieces and layer it together. I'll then move on to the assembly of my card project, starting with my postage collage panel and also that stitched panel I created earlier. I'm adding tape runner to the back of the postage collage. I'm going to add that to that stitched panel. So I have just a very small border going around that. And then I am going to add this to a card front out of powder blue cardstock. It is one of my favorite colors of cardstock. If it's not in stock, hit the notify me button, or you may already have a light blue cardstock in your stash. I lined the back of my panel with some foam tape, and I'm placing this on top of that powder blue cardstock. I will finish this card by adding my sentiment kind of tucked in between the trees and the deer, just using my liquid glue. I'll place something heavy on it and let it sit for a second. So this is a beautiful winter scene card for those winter birthdays. I also did one where I used a card front panel using in the navy cardstock. Now, I also have some other videos using this kind of postage collage theme. I can link that here for you so you can check that out for even more ideas. And I hope you found this video inspiring. Thanks so much for joining.